Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for joining me. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the 0.76 reducer for this telescope, the Askar FRA400 PHQ. Okay, so anyone who follows my channel will know that over the past few months I've been testing the Askar FRA400 PHQ. Now Sharpstar sent me this telescope, and with it they also sent the reducer. So this is a 0.76 reducer, so this takes the telescope from a 600mm focal length down to a 456mm focal length. It also reduces the focal ratio from f7.5 to f5.7, meaning that it will gather more light per exposure and will also have a wider field of view. So far I haven't had a chance to use it, but over this video what I'm planning to do is see how good it is, see my initial impressions. I'm also going to compare the stars to this telescope when it's native without the reducer, and I also own the FRA400 telescope, which is approximately the same focal length when I'm using the reducer on this one. So I'm going to compare this telescope with the reducer to my FRA400 as well. So let me show you how we put this reducer onto this telescope. Okay, so the reducer is really easy to install. All you do is take the camera and all of the adapters that come with the telescope off the back of the telescope, as you can see. Then you take the reducer, which has some threads on, and you just screw that straight into the back of the adapters. Then the whole thing just slides back inside the telescope, so the reducer is actually inside the telescope, and you reattach, and it is as simple as that. Can be installed or taken out in the space of a couple of seconds. Okay, so one thing to be wary of when using this reducer, or any reducer come to that, is you do have to think about back spacing or back focus. So this being a Petzval design telescope, I'm used to just attaching the camera and not having to worry about spacers or back focus, because anywhere you achieve focus, that is fine. You don't have to include 55mm or anything like that. However, when I added the additional glass into the system with the reducer, you then need to think about 55mm of back focus. I didn't do that for the first night and wondered why my stars were not looking great, but I have solved this issue now. I have got as close to 55mm as I can get. So my back focus is actually 56mm. So the camera with the tilt plate is 17.5. I then have the 20mm filter wheel, 2mm adapter here, and then I've added in a 16.5mm spacer here, so that takes me to 56. It's not perfect, 55mm would be perfect, but with the spacers that I've got available to me, this is as close as I could get. So if you get it to 55, you might see slightly better results, but 56mm should be close enough. Okay, so over the last couple of weeks I have managed to capture some data with this telescope and the reducer at 456mm, and also my Askar FRA400 telescope. Now I shot the same target with both telescopes, so I shot the Elephant's Trunk Nebula, such a fantastic target to shoot this time of year, and at that focal range I can pretty much fit the whole nebula in the frame. So I just thought we would go through the data and take a look at how good this reducer is. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you what the stars look like with this telescope without the reducer at native 600mm focal length, compared to this telescope with the reducer at 456mm, to see whether or not there is a difference. So I've got a couple of images to show you here, so let me just load them up. So the first image you're about to see is an image of the Cygnus wall. So this is a 10-minute HA sub, a single sub of the Cygnus wall. All of the images I'm about to show you are 10-minute HA subs. And as you can see, I created a mosaic of the corners and the center of this image. And as you can see, the stars in this look absolutely perfect. So I think they look absolutely great right to the edges. They look really round right in the edges. So This telescope without the reducer produces absolutely fantastic stars. So now let's take a look at what the stars look like when you attach the reducer. Now, I was a little bit worried about this because I haven't had great experiences with the reducer in the past. Some of the images I've taken with my Z73 with the reducer, I just couldn't get right, and I kept on having elongated stars right in the corners. But I have to say I'm actually really pleased with how this reducer works, even though I'm not perfect with the back focus. So this, again, 10-minute sub HA on the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. You can see how great the framing is with the reducer on this. Stars look really good in the center, and they are pretty good in the corners as well. If I show you the next image, here you can see the stars in the corner of the frame. So they're not quite as perfect as the telescope without the reducer, but that is to be expected. But to me, they are still very, very usable. They're still very good indeed. Now, I think that they are pretty darn good. I would definitely use these in my images. I have no problems with this. So overall, I'm very, very impressed with how that reducer has worked. Like I said, back focus isn't absolutely perfect. So if I tweak with the back focus and get it to 55 millimeters, there might even be a slight improvement. But the stars right to the edges, to me, look absolutely fantastic. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you was how good the stars are for this with this telescope and the reducer to this telescope at its native 400 millimeter focal length. So with the reducer, these two scopes are quite comparable. This is 400 millimeter f5.6 native. The PHQ80 is 456 at f5.7, so very similar results. So I'm just going to grab my computer now and I'll show you the differences between the stars. Okay, so as I mentioned, over the last few weeks, I also shot the Elephant's Trunk Nebula with this telescope, the FRA400, and this is a single 10-minute HA sub. Looks terrific, some really good detail in there. Again, the framing is absolutely fantastic. So let's take a look at the detailed comparison of the stars from this telescope compared to the PHQ80. So here it is. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have the FRA400. Again, a single 10-minute exposure in the HA. On the right-hand side of the screen, you have a single 10-minute exposure with the PHQ80 and the focal reducer. And as you can see, really good stars on each of the telescopes. Very round, right into the corners. Both of these are very, very usable. Now, I have to say that the conditions were definitely not the same for each of these, so it's not a scientific comparison. They were taken on separate nights. The conditions had changed. The phases of the moon had changed. I think the PHQ had a slightly better conditions when it comes to moonlight, but also the seeing definitely would have changed. So not a scientific side-by-side comparison, but I thought some people would be interested in this. If I have to pick one of these images, I would probably say I prefer the one on the right, just because you get those slightly tighter stars. Now, I don't know whether that's down to the telescope or the conditions. My guess would it would be the conditions, because I have loved this telescope. I still love this telescope. It produces fantastic images. But overall, really, really impressed with the focal reducer on the 80 PHQ. Okay, so I hope a few of you found that useful. The stars with this telescope are fantastic. They are virtually perfect without the reducer, and with the reducer they are still very good and definitely usable. So I am really pleased with how this telescope has performed. Like I said, definitely not a scientific side-by-side comparison. The data was taken on different nights, different conditions, but I thought a few of you would find that interesting. So I've actually captured quite a lot of data on the Elephant's Trunk Nebula over the last few weeks, and I've edited it into 3 different images. One with this telescope, one with the FRA400, and one where I've combined all that data together. And I was actually really pleased by how well that data actually combined together. It seems to be a really nice match with this telescope and the FRA. So I will share those images with you now. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and share this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. But thank you so much for watching. Here are the images, and I will see you in the next video.